So in a previous video, I gave out just this clear thing. You guys can give me some video ideas. One of you guys came up with me with a video idea of pros and cons of motherboard options. Bit of a harder topic, so I'm gonna kind of change it a little bit. I hope you're okay with that. I'm going to do some important specs of motherboards that you should know about and think about when you're buying a motherboard. Now, this isn't going to be a list where it's going to say, you should check about the chipset that you're getting, you should make sure it's Intel or AMD. That's just obvious, you should know that. Please make sure, but I'm not going to have that in this list. That is something that is a very common mistake. It is also something that is a very easy to fix problem. This list is going to have some more important stuff that does get overlooked quite a bit, and I'll try to find some examples as we're going. Before I get into the actual actual list though, don't forget to like the video if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also, link is down below to the merch store and go get some great merch. So when it comes down to motherboard specs, there's a lot of specs that can just kind of get overlooked and some that really shouldn't. One that I would say that probably you can just kind of overlook immediately would be the onboard memory. That used to be a thing that was actually very important. Nowadays, it's not too much important because of how CPUs, GPUs are so integrated and are able to talk to other at such fast speeds. The memory of a motherboard is not that much important, and also you're adding RAM. There's just a lot here, so it's not a spec that you really need to worry about. What is something you do need to worry about is the form factor of your motherboard. This is going to decide not just the case that you're getting, but also to decide that how horrible the cable management is going to be. So this picture here, this is what we call in PC building dwarfism. It is severely talking about the fact that this is a bigger chassis and you have a smaller motherboard inside of this. How you take care of this is just getting a proper motherboard to this size. He should have gotten, because this looks like a micro ATX or a mini ATX, he should have gotten a ATX form factor motherboard that would have gone about to here still, so that would have been normal, but all of these cables would have not had to made that long journey. It makes the cable management a little more clean. It also makes things a little easier when routing and you don't have so many tight cables. The other reasoning behind this is because of case sizes, because not all cases are made the same size. Not all cases are made to be as big as mine. Some cases are really tiny. For instance, these are 3 cases that honestly are about that big, 5-6 inches, and they're squares. They're not rectangles, they're squares. Well, they're rectangles in the opposite end, but they're not that big, so the motherboards aren't gonna be big inside of them. They're gonna be really small. There are some downsides to smaller motherboards, and we'll get into that in a bit here, but it is important to think about the form factor of your motherboards, and to make sure they match at least decently to the form factor of the chassis that you buy. I'm just now noticing that all of these are supposed to be Corsair knockoffs cases, so that's funny. Another important thing is going to be making sure that you get the correct CPU socket to what CPU you're using. So if you're using AMD, you want to make sure you get an AM4, AM3 socket, depending on which version of AMD you're getting. For instance, if you're getting a Ryzen 5000 or a Ryzen 3000, you're going to want AM4. If you are getting a Ryzen 7000, I think is what we're on now, right? You need to get a AM5, which is a whole new CPU socket, which looks nothing like how the AM4 socket looks. So big thing there. You're also going to want to make sure, same thing for Intel. There's LGA 775, LGA 1151, and LGA 1200. The only really good way, other than just reading product information, which can be really like just a hassle for what you're doing. PC Part Picker is entirely free. Anybody can use it. I use it a lot. You see me use it in a few videos. So let's just choose a CPU. Let's just go down here. Yeah, i5 10400. PC Part Picker is really good about making sure you get the right parts. So it now has already gone through the motherboard list and taken out all of the motherboards that will not work with that CPU. The socket I am on is LGA 1200, and I can use any of these motherboards. This is a really helpful tool for PC builders, and quite honestly, it is one of my most favorite parts of building a PC, is messing around with all the configurations and seeing what different parts I can put together and how the budget ends out. It's just a little thing that I like. You might like it too. Another one's going to be USB ports. Now, this isn't usually the most important part of a motherboard, but it's one a lot of people do care about just because CPU ports are important. Now, mostly what you'd be talking about here is on the back here. So this one has, looks like 5 USBs and a USB Type-C. It also has two Ethernet ports and an HDMI port. Why is this important? This is mainly important because these USB ports are going to have direct access to the CPU, as well as just the main bandwidth of where the motherboard generally goes is to these. This mostly has to do with the fact that this has the Ethernet cables coming out of it. You're supposed to use your audio out of this. It is recommended by all motherboard manufacturers and a lot of actually case manufacturers, just due to the amount of shielding that's around this, and also just because it's right next to the CPU. It has the most direct access. Pretty sure I'm right about that. Could be wrong. Leave a comment down below if I'm wrong. I definitely could be. Pretty sure I'm right though. Now, there are other spots where you're gonna get motherboards, where you're gonna get USB ports. So let's see if I can see them from down here. Can't really see it that well. So right here, you see front USB 1 and front USB 2. There's also gonna be another couple spots where they have labeled the connectors for honestly helping you make sure you get the right ones. Motherboard manual is gonna be also very helpful here. For instance, there's front audio, there's all your front panel connectors, another USB 2, SATA connectors. They're all labeled and they're really nice this way. Why is that important? It's more or less about the amount of devices you can have connected to a single computer. If you're anything like me, you have a lot connected at once. I have a little over 10 USB devices connected to my computer just right now, so I had to get a motherboard that had a lot of USB. And usually if it has a lot of USB, it also has a lot more bandwidth for this. You're usually going to run into a motherboard that's really expensive though to get those two things together. Another thing that's important to make sure would be the amount of RAM slots. You're not going to run into this too much unless you're getting a smaller motherboard, like I want to say it's mini ATX. Let me make sure. It's been a hot minute. Mini and micro ATX. I was half right. A lot of these are only going to have 2, sometimes even 1 RAM slot. Some actually do still have 4, like this B660 micro ATX motherboard from Gigabyte. This has 4 RAM slots. That is an important thing to know. There are some that do have still the correct number. I say correct just because I think 4 should be just the normal one, but sometimes you don't have all the room. Another thing would be just the kind of RAM it needs. We're on DDR5 for being the most recent. A lot of people are still on DDR4 and some people are still on DDR3. So you're gonna have a lot of motherboards that are gonna use either DDR3, 4, or 5. Again, PC part pickers are really big help for this to make sure you get the correct part, can correspond and work with your motherboard. You're not gonna run into this too many times, to be honest, but it does come up. But it is the type of connection ports that are on the back of your computer. Does it have Ethernet 2.5 gig? Does it have DisplayPort? Does it have HDMI? Does it have Type-C for using as a Thunderbolt? Can it be used as a Thunderbolt? That's actually a bigger question, and not a lot of motherboards actually support Thunderbolt. That's a whole different topic, and that's a lot more complicated. We'll probably do this in another video just about motherboards, because like I said, I'm gonna do a few videos of this, because this is a big topic. Why are these important? For some CPUs, it's not as much because they don't have onboard graphics like a lot of the AMD Ryzen CPUs from Gen 3 didn't at all. Gen 5 had a few. I don't know if Gen 1 did at all. I have to look. Intel, most of their CPUs actually did support onboard graphics, which was very important as a way of troubleshooting your motherboard as well as your computer in case you couldn't get your GPU to show off a video signal. The other reason is to make sure that your motherboard will actually work with everything you have. You don't want to get a motherboard that only supports keyboards that have the old, what is that connector? You don't want to get a keyboard that'll only use PS2 and not have any USBs, because USBs are important for a lot of peripherals now, specifically now. You also don't want to get a motherboard where you have to use onboard graphics and find it doesn't have a display port or HDMI, just VGA, and you don't have a VGA port on any of your monitors. There are ways to, I think, work around that, but it's not worth it, and just double check to make sure you get the right things. Just look at a picture of the motherboard you're getting or at the spec sheet that PC Part Picker. I'm going to keep on saying their name. PC Part Picker does have a list of the connections and headers that are on the back of this motherboard for you. It's very, very important. Another spec to be very curious about would be PCIe slots. Not really for the amount, because just normally you're not going to use more than one PCIe slot. I mean, I'm abnormal and I use 2. It's because I have a capture card in there. But PCIe slots are important to make sure you get the most out of your graphics card. I am running a 3070 Ti. I think this is a Gen 4 slot, if memory serves. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Gen 4. But the reason why you want to make sure is just to make sure you get the very most out of your GPU, because you paid for it, you might as well just get every bit of performance you can. Now, this is actually kind of just a personal one that really hits me dear to my heart, is if you're gonna have RGB in your computer, make sure you have enough RGB headers. This is really easy to just kind of blow up, way over proportion, but if you wanted to like make like a little rainbow thing and make it kind of like an effect goes from one end of this computer to the other, they need to be in a correct order, and you need to make sure you have enough headers to do this. Now, not a lot of motherboards, to my knowledge, have more than 5 USB headers. Actually, some only have 2 or 3. And 2 things about this is you want to make sure that the RGB devices that you plug into the motherboard correspond with the RGB headers on that motherboard, because there are two different connection types when it comes to when it comes to RGB headers, and you can't really use both. Technically there's 3, because there's one that technically there's 3, but we'll not talk about that. Just do me the favor, double check what RGB headers you're gonna get on your motherboard, and make sure the devices that you're wanting to connect will work with that header. And also make sure there's enough headers, or that you have enough splitters to make it work, and they don't over that the amount of RGB devices connected to the one header doesn't over pull from, I guess that's the right word, I don't think that's the right word, pulls too much from that header, because those headers can actually just short because of too much voltage going through them. So you do have to be careful about that. Those are all the motherboard specs that I think you guys should honestly just pay a bit of attention to when you're choosing motherboards, as well as also just honestly should in general when you're choosing computer parts sometimes. Making sure the connections all go together is a big thing on some things. So thank you guys again for tuning in. Don't forget to like the video if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel. Also, link is down below to the merch store. Go get some great merch. If you guys enjoyed this video, I hope you guys go check out the PC Basics playlist I have. It's just a, as it says, basic PC knowledge that most people are gonna need, and not everybody has. So I'm just trying to make it a little easier for everybody. Thank you guys again for tuning in, and have a good day.